right? And one of the institutions which I will talk about a little bit is an entity called RICH, the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. They happen to be incidentally working out of the same building as T-Hub, on the same floor as T-Hub. And just to give you some context, the whole idea of RICH is to basically to focus on how do you bring innovation from the lab to the market. So to give some context, there are 41 institutions in Hyderabad. We have institutions across a wide range of sectors. So for example, you have people like Agritech. From an Agritech standpoint, we have ICRISAT, we have NAARM, then we have the Indian Institute of, in other sectors, life sciences, and we have things like the National Institute of Nutrition, we have the Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, we have many defense labs, etc. So RICH and T-Hub work very collaboratively, work hand in hand. And for any of you who require support in terms of connecting to academia, right? There are, as Suresh mentioned, we work closely with a number of them, and those, there may be others whom we don't work with, but we'll be happy to facilitate connections through RICH to anyone who's keen on a specific, getting access to specific sectoral expertise within these labs.
Thank you, sir. I'll not take much time. 1 minute, one suggestion. Most of our research, what we currently doing are towards the sensors. And for all the sensors, we are all dependent on China manufacturers. They are not standard yet. There are no other person than the manufacturers who can supply us. So I recommend whatever the fund that you have currently would be invested towards small scale industries where they produce the mass production as China is doing it, especially like electronic wise. So please consider this as a suggestion.
Thank you, DSK. We'll take that input. I also see a couple of PS. Do we have some more time for some questions?
Yes, we have sir, more 15 minutes to take some questions.
Yeah. So I think Shankar, if you can, I think I see a lot of messages on chat. Some of them seem to be good morning, good afternoon type of thing, but they also seem to be some specific, questions, in terms of asks. So if you could just pick them up and then, have them, we can try and respond to some of them.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
So one of the questions, yeah, sorry.
One such question I think is,
Yes,
do you get mentoring support for ideation level startups? The answer to that is, I think yes, you do, but you do get mentoring, but eventually you need to quickly move to an MVP stage so that you can be part of the more what do you call effective programs of what TM has to have offer.
So one of the questions is, are you planning to open a special cohort for biotechnology in T-Hub as Telangana is growing well in biospace?
Sure. So I'll quickly respond to that. So at this point in time, one of the areas, and you'll see more of that, as we go forward, is also trying to identify a few areas where we can build two parts. One is a deep collaborative ecosystem, as well as trying to identify. I'll just give you a set of areas, and these are right now, this is still work in progress, but we're trying to identify about 5 or 6 areas where we want to establish Hyderabad as the center of innovation, right, and entrepreneurship in those areas. And some of the areas we have kind of identified. There's of course work to be done before we roll it out formally. Are areas like, for example, in the life sciences space, which is I think what kind of you refer to, in the medical devices space, possibly in fintech, possibly in blockchain, possibly in edutech, right? Possibly in animation and gaming, because there's also an initiative by the government of Telangana, in terms of setting up a large facility for animation and gaming, which is being set up right next to T-Hub phase 2. I think somebody had a question about hardware, right? So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the work which T-Works is doing. T-Works is another entity set up by the government of Telangana, which helps entities which are working on hardware to convert what they are doing, first to a prototype, and then also to some extent to convert to mass production, right? So we will identify 5 or 6 areas, sectors, where we want to establish, Hyderabad and Telangana as the center of innovation and entrepreneurship. So you will see some of these initiatives rolling out during the course of the year, right? So as I said again, watch this space.
So we'll allow few of the raise hand options here to talk. Mr. Kiran, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Kiran. Our company name is Medfile, and we are we develop software for hospitals, labs, and diagnostic centers for their business operations right now. We have some traction in Telangana right now already. We have about 300 hospitals, labs using our software. Now the concept is we want to expand pan India, something like Zoho Books has done for the healthcare segment. Would I get some support from T-Hub for doing this kind of expansion in terms of mentoring as well as financial support?
Suresh, would you like to respond, and then I'll complement what you're saying?
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't quite follow what the question is specifically.
See, we develop software for operations software for hospitals and diagnostic centers.
Okay.
Eventually, we have some idea of consolidating and creating a medical file for the patient, but I feel the market is not there yet because hospitals are not willing to give out information still. So we are in the operations software, and we have about 300 clients in Hyderabad already.
Okay.
And we want to grow pan-India basis in a faster approach, quickly pan-India basis. And I wanted to see if I can get the mentoring as well as the financial support for doing this kind of expansion.
Definitely. I mean, we have programs that are geared towards startups at different stages, and healthcare. We actually work with Atal Innovation Mission. Under that, we have the Atal Innovation Center hosted at T-Hub, and our focus there is health and life sciences. So we'll be very happy to work with you on that. I mean, in terms of expansion, that's one of the key areas that we support the startups in. Funding, as MS had already explained, it's conditional based on qualification. Any startup that is qualified will be very happy to provide the funding support and help you grow.
Okay. So should I come and meet you sometime at T-Hub?
Definitely, that would be very great. I mean, today I'm the only one on the call, but we have a good set of team who are also founders. So you can come and meet the team and you'll understand the specific need that you are in with, what area you're working in, and then suggest how we can move forward.
So maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I can come by to the.
Unfortunately, Saturday, Sunday, we are not.
Yeah, not. I mean, yeah, maybe Monday.
Definitely in the office. Yeah, definitely. You just need to give us 1 day notice because there are restrictions on entry. 1 day prior, if you inform the team, we'll be happy to meet you at.
Should I call the T-Hub directly and inform them, or how do I? Is there an email?
Yeah, you can just write to community@thub.co. I'm going to put this as a general mail ID for all to reach out to. Right, so anybody who has a query can just write to this mail ID, and we can happy to respond to you and then understand what your needs are and take it forward. I put the mail ID in the chat box. So any startup that would like to have some discussion with us, whether it's related to mentoring, growth, funding related, what are all the questions that you have, we'll be happy to have an engaged discussion with you first and then guide you in terms of where you can go. Okay, I put the mail ID in the chat box. Please take a look. MSR, you want to add something?
I think, yeah. So, I mean, I just want to state again that I see a lot of questions on chat. As I said, some of this may require individual one-on-one conversations. Happy to do so. And again, we work with just to put, make sure that everybody gets this. We work with startups at different stages. We work with startups which are at idea stage. We work with startups which have reached a certain critical mass in terms of MVP, customers, etc. We work with startups which are bootstrapped. We work with startups which are funded. So we are, we are not, we are also reasonably sector agnostic at this point of time. We want to essentially get, to build a ecosystem where startups of all kinds and shades can scale and grow. Obviously, our focus is little more oriented towards product/platform based companies, and not so much on traditional services types of companies, because that's the story, whose time is now kind of past, right? And again, sectors, it could be direct to consumer, it is B2B to G, B2B to C, all of those, whatever acronyms you can think of, we are happy to support. And as Suresh said, please do reach out. It's a fairly simple mail ID, community@thub.co. Just drop us a note, and we'll happy to connect and set up individual one-on-ones. Again, we want to make as many meetings as possible in person, but we'll obviously have to watch the evolving situation with COVID. So we may, in some cases, have to do this virtually, but that's reality. So we'll all work around that.
We'll take one more question. Anita, please go ahead with your question. Anita Rego, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, I'm Anita Rego and I work in the mental health space. And if you are aware, Telangana is almost sitting on a time bomb when it comes to mental health issues. It is on the top 3 for suicides. It's on the top 3 for alcohol dependence. It has severe problems in terms of issues related to mental health. And there's also been a call from the health department for addressing mental health issues. I have been trying to, I have my startup is a web-enabled platform, which becomes an entry point for people having mental health issues. And from there, we intend to have a whole range of services for people who are in this space. Now I have started getting traction, but however, I'm looking out for support in terms of strengthening a marketing space, because that's not something that I think I'm a little weaker on. So I have tried applying, but somehow something is not working. So in that sense, I wanted to request if someone can really assess me and help me out in terms of where is it that I'm going wrong, and some amount of hand holding so that I can actually get this off the ground and work it well.
Yeah, hi, Suresh here. So, I mean, mental health is definitely a problem, and I think it has become multiplied over the past 2 years, where a lot of people have been, restricted to home or isolation kind of cases, working from home, where the social interaction has come down significantly. So there is definitely a need. There is a lot of, I think, a lot of solutions have come online, and so that there is definitely a need for that. I can't give you a detailed answer. I would request you to, write to us, and let's have a conversation where, in terms of understanding what exactly you're trying to do, in which space you're trying to address from. There are stages from schooling all the way to employee or personal mental health. Yeah.
Yeah, my focus is not on the minor normal mental health problems.
Yeah.
I'm looking at hardcore mental health issues, which is not being done. It is in that sense probably not something that a lot of people would be able to do. We are going to have super specialists on the platform so that we reach to that population that really is looking out for services but is not able to get.
Definitely, Anita. As I said, I think in this call, it will be getting difficult to get into all the details and understand
Yeah,
and guide you.
I do
It'll be good
understand.
if you can connect with us. We'll be happy. We can have
Because
either
I
an
have
online.
been trying. I've been trying and I've not been able to make a dent. And that's why I wouldn't have raised this if I was able to get even one step entry. I'm not getting even 1 foot in.
So use
Anita,
us as a sounding board. Let
Anita, as I said, what we can do is we have the future ahead of us. Unfortunately, we can't change what has happened in the past, but happy to please do reach out. Use the mail ID, which I'm happy to say that
Sure,
again.
I will do that.
And please be assured we'll respond.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
We can take one last question. Dipender Singh. So Dipender Singh, please go ahead with your question. Dipender, you have to unmute yourself and then talk.
Actually, Dipender is one of our startups itself.
Okay, so maybe is there some? Deepak, you are the one who can talk now. Please share your question.
Sure. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for the very informative session that we have been witnessing today. My question is to MSR, sir. My name is Deepak Kumar, and I represent Namsa Meditech, Noida headquartered startup into healthcare space. We are well past our MVP stage. We are part of the NASSCOM's RevUp accelerator program too. Now, the problem that typically we are facing is that we have consciously taken a call to not go to the investors for now. We have a traction in the market, which is a way of validating our solution. Now, what we are looking at is collaboration with THub, where THub can, assist us in some way with their connections with the hospitals in Telangana, where we can go for a pilot engagement, because that will also pave our way. We are based out of Noida, but that will pave our way to move our base to Telangana actually, and settle over there and expand our business over there. So, MSR, sir.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. I mean, obviously, we'd like to understand a little bit more. I saw what you typed on chat. Happy to understand a little bit more. But prima facie, at a principal level, we do have connections with a few selected hospitals. And once we get to understand a little bit more about what you're doing and what the what the value proposition for the potential hospitals is, happy to help facilitate connections.
So thank you, MSR sir. So in such a case, would you suggest that I send a mail to the community email ID which you mentioned, and yes, I refer to this discussion, and then I look forward to some feedback from your end?
Yes. So my request to everyone on this call, right, is the fastest way of for us to start engaging is please do drop a mail to the community, the mail ID. I'll say it again, community@thub.co, right? If you could send a mail out with with a few details of who you are, where you are from, what problem are you trying to solve, and what stage you are. We will respond to you. We'll try, and obviously we have about 240 people on the call, so I'm expecting we'll probably have 220 queries. So we will definitely do our we'll do our best to come back to you as soon as possible. And again, at the request of sometimes, in case there's a delay in the reply, please don't hesitate to send a follow-up mail. In case there's a delay in reply, our endeavor would be to get back to you as quickly as we can. But in case there's a delay, just send us another follow-up mail in case you don't hear from us. We'll make sure we acknowledge every single email, right, and respond to you on potential next steps.
So we are exactly at 11:30. Thank you so much, MSR, PS, Suresh, for your time today. And it was a wonderful session indeed. To all the attendees, stay tuned. We are coming up with a wonderful session in next 15 minutes. Something on depending the startup corporate engagement. So you can use the same link which you have used it for the inaugural. The same link is appear on the chat window as well. Please stay tuned for the next 15 minutes. We are coming up with the next session. Thank you everyone for joining.
So I would, so on behalf of T-Hub, first of all, thank you all for the very enthusiastic participation and also many of the questions. As I said, the format of this, many of these conversations will need to be one-on-one. But thank you for reaching out. Appreciate your, participation, and we do look forward to serving you and the form and fashion will define as we go forward. But thank you, and look forward to working with you in the times to come to help scale your enterprises.
Thank you again. Thank you for joining everyone this morning. Thank you, Shankar. We move to the next step.
Yes. So we'll start the next session exactly at 11:45. So attendees, stay tuned. You can be on the link. You can take a quick break and come in 15 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Morning, Saurabh. Morning.
Hi, Srini.
everyone.
It's good to finally see you. I was also attending a part of the morning session. So wonderful to see you and meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Pleasure.
Hi,
Good
morning. Good morning, Srinivasan.
Morning. First
Morning,
time I'm
morning.
seeing you. First time I'm seeing you in a virtual session.
Good.
Nowadays, it's the other way around, right? You meet people in Zoom first before you meet them in person, but this is the
The other way
scenario in
now.
reverse.
Yes. Good. Yeah, God has been kind. Hi, Saurabh, how are you?
Hi,
Hi.
good morning, Rohan. Hi, good to see you.
Hi, morning.
Good morning, Saurabh and Rohan.
Hey,
Hi.
Suresh.
Good morning. I think Raj, you're also online. You there?
Not yet, I think.
Just message me saying that he's already online.
Shankar, just check with him if he used the right link.
Yeah, I'm just checking.
Yeah.
There are so
That's
many links. I mean, I joined, I believe, Abhay's link, and then I was in a webinar, right?
I think Shankar, Raj has joined probably as the general link.
Yes,
Maybe you need to
Raj
update
has
it.
just joined.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Raj. Good morning. What about Abhay? Any update?
Hi, thank you so much here for making me a panelist. You know, I was in the meeting, you know, as a
As an attendee.
Morning, Raj.
morning.
Morning,
Can
Raj.
you hear me good? You know, good. Yeah.
Very clear. Yeah.
I love your original background. Communicates the right message, right set of people, right set of nomenclatures and pictures to show, and obviously a very prominent logo of yours. So congratulations.
Thanks, Saurabh. I appreciate it.
Suresh, a quick check. My voice is coming clearly. You are able to
Yes.
hear me.
Quite clear. Yeah. Shankar, you checking with Abhay?
Yeah, I'm checking with Abhay.
Okay.
He'll be joining in sometime. We can start the session.
Oh, okay. Actually, I had his name as the first to introduce, but we'll change the sequence. No, I just put it in alphabetical order. I thought that would be simpler than trying to pick and choose. And he's starting with A, we came up on top. Right. I think, Shankar, we can start the session because it's already 11:46.
Yes, we can start the session.
I mean, are we live, visible to the audience or not?
Yes, it's gone to the audience at 11. We can go ahead, please.
All right. Very good morning to all.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So, all right. So, a very good morning to all of you. Welcome to this panel discussion. So, as we already heard in the inaugural session, the role of corporates and startups to work together is very critical for the success of both. It's not one is defining the success of the other. So I feel that it is important for both. But starting from the perspective of a startup, once the startup has built the product that they have in mind as a vision and the problem they want to solve, unfortunately, a lot of times startup expects that, you know, somebody should fund me so that I can grow. And a lot of times we find that, you know, having the right customers and actually generating revenues from the customer and start the journey towards organic growth and then later on get the funding and grow rapidly tends to be a more sustainable model for startup journey. So in that context, today is actually a very significant milestone for T-Hub that, you know, we are doing after almost 2 years, an event where we are trying to bring together corporates and startups to talk to each other. And in that context, this panel discussion would hopefully shed some light in terms of how this interaction between the two key players in the ecosystem, the startups and the corporates, happens. What happens, what doesn't work, what works, and how do they help each other. Those are the points that we want to cover today. From that perspective, so we try to maintain a balance. So we have two panelists who come from the corporate side of it, and we have two panelists who are startups. Currently they are basically under the title of startups, but I think they're not far from being called corporates in the very near future. So that's how it is. They're large enough, but at the same time, I think they are still in the startup mode. So we'll get started with that. So I had actually planned to introduce the panel in the alphabetical order, but the person with his name starting with A is not joined yet. So we'll go ahead and continue. So the format of this session will be that initially we'll introduce the panelist, and each panelist will spend about 2 to 3 minutes sharing his thoughts on the topic. And then we will go into an interactive session between the panelists. Later on in the last 15 minutes, we'll open up the session to all the audience so that anybody can ask the questions. So if you have questions, obviously you can keep typing the questions in the Q&A part so that Shankar will be able to look at the questions. All panelists can also see the questions, and then we will answer. And somebody who wants to have a general conversation can also raise their hand, and we will be able to respond to them. One request is keep the questions more generic in relation to the corporate startup innovation interactions. We discourage questions specifically asking about any product related to the panelists. They will not be discussing the points related to specific their work area. All right, so let's get started with the first panelist. So I'd like to welcome Raj Pani, founder of Jaggle Prepaid Ocean Services Private Limited. So he is the founder and chairman of Jaggle. He has spent more than 20 years in business consulting. He founded Jaggle, I think now it's completed 10 years as a network agnostic payment platform on which merchants and consumers could seamlessly interact. A startup evangelist, a strategist, and a serial entrepreneur who previously worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited and Yantra. Raj has extensive experience in setting up a business, structuring it, driving the sales, and scale it to the next level. From an academic background, he is a business graduate from New York University Stern School of Business, and he has successfully led the company to over 300 crores valuation and another 2 companies to 150 crores valuation. Recently, he has won the Most Promising Business Leaders of Asia 2021 by the Economic Times. We are only taking a brief introduction. All these panelists have a large bio, but in the interest of time, we've only introduced a brief. So Raj, let's get started.
Yeah, sorry, interrupting. Me and Abhay both will laugh at that, 300 crore valuation. Okay, so, just from that perspective, maybe I'll do a little bit correction there. I'm a serial entrepreneur, having built, multiple companies. Jaggle is my third company, and like that, I have built about, 5 companies, successfully exited a couple of companies, and in the process of raising either exit routes or funding routes or liquidity events for other companies. Jaggle today is a large company with about 20,000 crores in gross transaction volume, okay, and about 400 crores, roughly about 400 crores in revenue, and about 70 odd crores in profits. Okay, it is a dream project for us, really impacting how I should say the entire payment ecosystem. We are in spend management, and our focus is that any payment which goes from an enterprise, from a corporate, or from a SME should be on our rails, and that's how is what we are doing. We have another company called Zigzug, which is concentrating on the SME segment. We have recently launched our credit card called Founders card, and I hope and wish all the other corporates who are present there please apply for Founders Card, and we'll be happy to provide you credit. Thank you.
Okay, so Raj,
Raj, this is not a public secret. This is a public secret, so I'll say it. Raj has invested. Last time I met him, he told me he'd invested in 46 companies. So I don't know what the count is now, but yeah.
No, we met recently. MSR,
it's only a week old, MSR, so
it hasn't changed.
Unless, yeah.
Hasn't missed, so much. But very, very happy to be part of the panel and participating. And thank you for the other panelists, to have joined the webinar.
So Raj, let's hear your opening thoughts on the topic and get going from there.
Sure.
Keep it short, 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the key things which I learned when, I used to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers in the US, right? And it's a very large company out there. Okay. And this was, from the years 97, 98, 99, 2000. And these were the days, of .com boom. Okay. And we, as sitting in PwC and our job, I was in the MCS practice, and being in MCS practice, we constantly evaluated, consulting projects. Okay. And the beautiful things happened is that, when we would go to companies like buy.com, okay, that time buy.com was a very, very large company, and we'd see, how fast would buy.com move, right? The decisions which we would take probably in 6 to 9 months, the decision in startups would be taken in a single day. Okay. So what happens is that, the ideation to execution process, for startups is phenomenal. Okay. Versus you go to corporates where, everything, there is hierarchy, there is layers, you need to take approvals, right? And all of that stuff. Now, how can we collaborate together, to get the best result? Okay. Corporates have, they have a lot of intellectual property with them. They have, money with them. They have the ability to research. They have ability to put people, but ideas, okay, are with the startups. Okay. How do we get them together, to create many more, many more ideas to see light of the day, right? And that collaboration between a corporate and a startup is an ideal place, is how I would see. And I'm very, very happy that, T-Hub has brought them, this thing together, where over a period, already, they are doing a lot of collaborations between startups and corporates. But in coming days, I think what would happen is that corporates and startups, okay, would intermingle with each other to create, products which are useful to the larger ecosystem.
Thanks, Raj. That's a good start. I think it's motivational to the startups and the corporates at the same time. Next, we move on to Saurabh Gupta. So again, I'm just randomly picking the names, no particular order. So Saurabh is the digital program leader for APAC region for Raytheon Technologies. As a brief introduction, he is an innovator and a marketer. He's currently working as the Deputy General Manager and Head of Innovation, Center of Excellence at MSIL. In the past, he's been part of the sales planning, strategic arm of marketing and sales at MSIL. And he has also given the key role of Regional Manager, Sales and Marketing. He has worked on several cross.
Suresh, I'll take a liberty of. You're just. I think you've taken a part of Rohan.
Yeah. I think
so that's absolutely. That's absolutely fine. Not much introduction.
Oh, sorry. I think it got mixed up. Okay. Apologies.
No problem. Not much introduction required. I think you did what.
Sorry,
I'm part of Raytheon Technologies. So that's, and I take care of the EPAC region from that standpoint. Primarily responsible for partner performance as well as startup engagement in the region. Also do that role on a global perspective in terms of creating right use cases and get the business unit engaged and drive that engagement program. So quickly setting context, I think let me start by thanking Srini, Paneer, and Suresh. A wonderful job in terms of taking this key initiative, driving the important and a very valid point in today's world in terms of how do corporates and startups can come together. It's like a mixture of past and future, right? And I'm not saying which is past and which is future, or a giant and Goliath. And we keep coming and keep hearing about various stories about how they come together. Sometimes it works and many times it doesn't. While there are enough programs about digital marketing, how to raise funds, how to create a team, how to get mentored and things like that, there's not enough that is there. It's this important topic of engagement. So really congratulations for setting this up, and thank you for inviting me. On that account, of course, wonderful panel, mix of wonderful gentlemen who have already created large size businesses and have gone through the journey recently, and getting incumbents and people from the large organizations to get their view. So thank you, panelists, and pleasure to be here. Just to set the context, I'm not going to take much. It's two important points that I want to highlight, which will be very helpful for various startup friends who are looking for interacting with businesses. As I said, one of the important aspects to understand, and when you engage with a corporate business or in this kind of an engagement, is to have a very clear line of sight, a well-defined objective. What do I mean with that? I have seen enough scenarios in my personal experience where a startup has a brilliant business idea, and the startup founder is so much mesmerized with what he wants to propose that sometimes he doesn't talk the language, a basic principle of selling, what exactly is in it for the corporate house. So not talking too much of technology, but talking the business use case in terms of how the solution or something that startup is working on will change the life of the business that you're engaging with, how it will add value. Businesses typically talk about top line, bottom line, savings, and that kind of KPIs. One of the key things that I will advise my startup friends when they drive a corporate engagement, have a very well-defined use case, which clearly defines what is it for the corporate to engage and what will be the end product look like. Defining is not good enough. You have to remind and realign it on various intervals. I have seen where there are projects have been going for over a year and it has lost the essence. Everybody thinks that they understand what they're there to deliver. So the realignment, re-emphasizing, course correction in terms of why we are engaging at first place, a very well-defined objective is very important. And I think that's the first point that I wanted to leave with you. The second important point for both sides is to have a well-defined engagement model. Okay, and I can't have put enough focus and emphasis on that. What do you mean by that? Engagement model means in terms of having a very clear definition. How will you engage? Will it be a proof of concept? Will it be how often you will meet? Who will be the business partners or business mentors that they will be giving time? Raj will acknowledge it from his consulting days. Whenever we took a new consulting project, we always had a very clear definition, right? We went to the people and said how much time you would have to devote to this, how much time your business partners would have to give it to this particular consulting project. Similarly, a start should very clearly articulate what are you going to need from a corporate team. Okay, and this includes how much man hours they would have to spend, what access to their facilities you will need, how often would you like to take a feedback, and that defining that kind of a cadence and commitment is very important. If you don't have it, then it will be just one other program that will be there in their funnel, which will get lost, and that's one of the prime reasons why the things get dropped, because there is no owner of that particular key area of work in the corporate side of it. The other piece is I'm a strong advocate of something called sprint and minimum viable product. My friends from software, most of them would be a tech startup, so they will understand. While you have a long-term vision in terms of what you intend to do, as part of the value proposition, as part of the engagement model, please define your minimum viable product in short run. You will be scrutinized, you will be asked questions, what are you doing? A lot of time a corporate will not be able to understand what is the larger picture. Hence, it's always good to have some kind of a short-term deliverables with very clearly well-defined parameters, a working prototype in your back pocket to showcase to various stakeholders as people change, even on the corporate side. These are some starting thoughts I will like to leave with you, Suresh. Back to you, and looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thanks, Arup. Apologies for the mix-up in the introduction. So next we go with, I would like to welcome Abhay. Abhay is a tech entrepreneur He's a co-founder, business head, team builder, people person, and a lifelong learner. His startup Recycle works towards empowering businesses to achieve their EPR target and other stakeholders to get complete traceability and transparency with help of its digital technology solution called Recycle. It's the first integrated digital platform for efficient waste and recycling management. That's a brief introduction about Abhay. Abhay, you want to add something from your side? And then also share
I'll just
your
add,
thoughts.
Abhay is too modest, so I think he won't say it, but I'll just say it on his behalf. Just last week, I think he raised a 22 million round from Morgan Stanley. So, which will now put him on the path to scale and greatness.
Thanks, Srinas, and Saurabh, thanks for the introduction. So I think, like Funny, I also started my entrepreneurial journey in the similar time, 98, 99. Funny was running e-commerce startup. I was also doing the same in a different domain. We both, I think, completed 24 years. Funny, I think, if not wrong, 25th years of entrepreneurship, Silver Jubilee.
No, of course, myself, I have, I started when I was 16 away. So Raj is much ahead of you. I was in 10th standard when I started. So
so I think, so I started, Raj started around in 16, I started at 25, so 9 years senior to me. So I think my journey as an entrepreneur started in 1998 as a first e-commerce marketplace from India called malamal.com. Then I started a SaaS company in 2007, which was called martjet.com. It was like amongst the first few SaaS companies in India, focused towards the retail market. Any brick and mortar retailer wanted to go digital could use our technology, and SaaS was a new technology by then in India. And that is where that is the first time I started. My whole target customers were corporates, retail corporates, right? Where I have to go and sell them. In the first venture, it was not really needed because it was more consumer marketplace. So I had my own experiences with them for that 6-7 years, where I had Walmart, Future Groups, and Lulus of the world as our clients. Pizza Hut, all these were our clients. So we had our own experiences, which we'll share subsequently. But then subsequently, Martjet got acquired in 2015 by a Singapore-based company called Capillary Technologies. So after that exit, I left. I became accidentally invested in a couple of startups, not like Raj. I only one digit less than him. I think I invested in a couple of startups. After that, after 1 year, then I realized that I'm still a horse who people can bet on, and took a started a third entrepreneurial journey through Recycle. That is in 2016 end. I think last 5 years has been phenomenal, and Recycle has been a marketplace, B2B marketplace for waste. So we are actually, in a normal line, digital kabadi wala. So that's what we're trying to do. And it's a huge opportunity, I suppose, and an opportunity where we are trying to solve some real problem and bringing the material back into the circular economy. And I think that is something, bringing that sustainability into the ecosystem. So hopefully getting a good traction, and looking forward.
Thanks, Abhay. Next, I think we have the last speaker, Rohan. You would like to share? I will skip the introduction and let you introduce yourself.
Please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks to the T-Hub team. I mean, we've been meeting regularly, like Srinivas Rao and shared at the beginning. So it's nice to connect with Abhay San, Saurabh San, and Raj. Maybe in future we meet in person as well. So just to set the context, you all so experienced, they've already shared their words of wisdom. But to the early stage startups, if you were to ask me, I believe there's a better time than now, because currently corporates have realized the need for innovation. Of course, operations are extremely important because that gives us bread and butter. And a company like Maruti Suzuki is very, very good in operations. Number speaks for itself. But yes, at the same time, company has realized that is my audio not okay?
There's a little bit of an echo.
There's some echo.
Is it okay now?
Go ahead, Rohan. We can hear you, but there is some little bit of echo.
Okay. 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 So coming back to the point of not an, I mean, I could better time where a corporate can engage with a startup like Maruti Suzuki. We have different programs like a corporate accelerator, incubation program, several other programs wherein the company has felt the need to collaborate with startups with a very, very open heart. And of course, like Saurabh said, that there should be a proper engagement structure. So that has been put in because a company the size of Maruti Suzuki, about 18,000 people. So you need a proper structure with startups who are extremely agile, and some of the founders have raised a lot of money. I'm sure these guys must be taking decisions in one day, what a corporate like us probably takes in a couple of months. So on that context, I would just say that there could be for early stage startups to collaborate. And I think this is one of the fantastic times to come together, marry technologically, and of course, create a winning proposition for not just the startups, for corporates as well. Because any partnership has a winning proposition for both the entities. So on that note, yeah.
Thanks, Rohan. So we'll start with a basic, so we are talking about corporate startup interaction. So the 4 people here on the panel know this world very well. So I'd like to get your views. Maybe we'll start with Saurabh. In terms of what do you think, I mean, how is it going today in terms of corporate to startup collaboration?
So I think we have, thanks for asking that question, Suresh. I think it's a very important one. Just to give you a lay of the land, a recent study says that for about top 500 Forbes 500 companies, about 60% are engaged with startups in some shape and form. An average large size Fortune 500 company would have anywhere between 50 to 60 startup engagements ongoing in any year. Okay. Things are improving. Earlier, innovation was a kind of a good, important thing to put it onto your website. For example, in India, if you go to any site of any large corporate, you will see that now innovation is on the front page, including obviously CSR, which is being mandated by law. So, and what will happen is that most of these engagement will stop at hackathons. Okay. They will do 1 or 2 programs, they will ask for some ideas, and that is where they will stop. But what we have seen recently is that now corporates realize, and I think that's something that you would have covered as part of your morning part, is that we corporates have also realized that engaging with startup ecosystem is very important for various reasons, right? It gets the innovation culture, keeps you ahead of curve, it keeps you, there are all the right business reasons, KPI driven business reasons for engaging with startups. And hence that engagement is now happening on right parameters. There are right programs that are happening. There are various accelerator incubators programs that have been run by the startups. And now that is reflected in the various growths and various partnerships that are coming together. One of the key model which I would like to share with you, which has encouraged, which have emerged in last couple of years and is very prominent, is any large corporate would now like to keep what I call it as a funnel-based system. A funnel-based system will always have 50 to 60 startups in that at various stages. Okay, the pass-through rate in a funnel is about 20%. That means about 4 out of 5 startups drop off in some process. But what happens is funnel solves various other problems. One, when you engage with a startup first, sometimes you are talking different languages. So a proof of concept model, minimal investment to validate what works, to well define a problem. That kind of an approach is a funnel program helps. Second is it helps you, the corporate, to assist the startup in creating a industry specific solution. It also creates, when you're starting a relationship with a startup, you really don't know what will be the long-term model. It also creates that alignment in the due course in terms of how the model works, whether it will be an IP sharing, whether it will be investment, whether it will purely be as a customer. So I think in present context, it is one of the preferred model of engagement where a corporate maintains a large funnel approach. A lot of startups at the start of it, a few of them go from a proof of concept pilot to a commercial stage. That kind of a model is happening. And you will find that from an overall global perspective, as well as to an India, even in an India context, a lot of startups at various levels are getting funding from the corporate business houses. Various numbers floats in those regions across the proof of concept, pilot, and commercial launches.
Thanks, Arup. I think there are, in your brief, there are a lot of takeaways for startups to look at, that there is a potential, huge potential for startups to engage with corporates. So I think that's one. So Raj, I think since you are, sector agnostic in a way, so how do you see this scenario today? Raj, you're on mute.
So I have a, I have a beautiful take on this. Okay, and I'll relate a quick story. And entrepreneurs' prime job is to do storytelling. Right? Look at some of the banks. Okay, went ahead and did partnerships with multiple fintechs. Right. You look at all the new age banks, they wanted fintechs to come in, do partnership, bring in agility, reach to the customer faster, customer experience, lot of stuff, okay, which they were not really able to do. Okay, they wanted the fintechs to do, right? So fintechs went ahead, fintechs like us said, fantastic, give us an opportunity. Banking is a very large, it's a big blue ocean. We are unable to, understand, get in. So we said, okay, give us small pieces, right? So they gave us small pieces, right? Then we went back to them. We said, okay, now we have mastered this, give us a bigger piece. They gave us a bigger piece. And what has happened today is that fintechs are buying banks, okay? And the existence of banks is in question, okay? And today, in this forum, I will tell you that banks in India, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, there may not be any banks to bank with. They will all become custodians, right? So this is called, Joseph Schumpeter's theory of, creative destruction, right? For anything, if you have to create new, you have to creatively destruct the old. And, for fintechs today, and you see BharatPe, joining the new bank, which is the Unity, bank like that, taking over PMC. So this phenomenon, over a period of time, now RBI is also realizing that fintechs are, much better prepared to, handle banks, right? So what started off 10 years back, a small partnership between, banks and fintechs is now, it is like cannibalizing the banks itself, right? So this is one dark part of, how do you call it, corporate, startups ecosystem. Okay. Similarly, if you look at it, there are so many more fintechs which came into play only on the backing of banks, right? So that story is also true today. For Zaggle to be able to do, such kind of, revenues, and without being a regulated entity, we have to thank bank, right? But at the same time, don't be surprised, because our vision is to become a global digital bank. We might acquire a bank, right? So the whole this entire story of partnership also has to be seen in a different way. While we'll say all good things, nice things about this, there is also this challenge which, your corporate faces.
That's interesting and slightly scary at the same time, that I think we have some banks also on the session. They may not be very happy to hear that they're possibly funding fintech companies which in the future will acquire the bank itself. So, but it's an interesting perspective, I think.
So similarly, Suresh, just look at, Yahoo, okay? So when Yahoo funded, Alibaba, okay, and look at where Alibaba went and where Yahoo went, okay? So there are examples on both sides, right? There are, sometimes, your investment is much more larger than, the entire company's valuation.
True. So, we have actually a fintech session in the afternoon for Corporate to Startup Connect. So the fintech companies that are participating there, if you're on the call here, I think maybe it's a very positive outlook for you that you can potentially acquire the bank that is going to fund you today in the future. All right, very good way to start this. So now let's, so we identified where we are today. So now I'll put the second, I want to bring a perspective from the other two speakers, Abhay and Rohan. What are the areas where you see that this collaboration, it's from whatever Saurabh mentioned, there is already a good collaboration happening. But what are the areas where you think that this could be even better? Like maybe top 2 or 3 that from your perspective of a corporate world as well as startup world, where this collaboration could actually get better. We start with you, Rohan.
Yeah, sure. I hope my audio is okay now. Okay. Okay. So, some of the key points, I believe Saurabh fantastically covered most of it. In fact, Raj also talked about, if I were to summarize, set a foot in the door and then scale up some inside the corporate, especially for a startup. And then once you have an entry, then you can scale it up. So that's is the key point. If I were to somehow startups, if they're able to get a foot in the door, then of course, then sky is the limit. Then scaling up easy, but it is far easier than making the first connect. And especially with the startups dealing with the corporates, I would say don't be greedy. Don't get swayed by the balance sheet of the corporate, because some of the corporates like us are extremely cost sensitive. So be patient, especially technology areas like Raj is doing a phenomenal work in fintech. And onboarding a lot of technology led startups onto Maruti Suzuki. In fact, 6 startups are already working with Maruti on a multi-crore yearly long contracts. So such is the beauty that if you are patient, if you're not greedy, if you create a winning proposition for both the corporate as well as the startup, and you are not in the race to raise money, sky is the limit. And especially when you're dealing with a company with a large organization like Maruti Suzuki, where the organization in itself is very innovative. But yes, a separate area is carved out to engage with startups. Like Saurabh said, do a lot of POCs, because that's where you test the waters. And what Maruti or other large corporates have is the test bed, because that helps you refine your product. Because we actually salute the entrepreneurial spirit of all the young startups today, because some of them have left their cushy jobs. They have not even sat for placements from the premier institute. Salute that spirit. So the model is of co-creation rather than just plug and play. So if you are able to understand these nuances, getting a foot in the door, co-create something. I believe one of the panelists talked about sell what you have, rather co-create something, because this is what I'm looking for, because then you create something new for the customers, and then you create something which a value which is long lasting and not something which can be copied in a month or two. So these are some of the fine pointers, I believe, which can make the partnership more successful. And last but not the least, for the corporates, it's not easy to go in the start everything alone, where people like companies like T-Hub comes into picture. If you have partners like T-Hub and others, the entire journey becomes far smoother and more doable, actually, if you were to ask.
Thanks, Rohan. I think there is a very critical point that probably I'd like to highlight, even though you just mentioned it once. I think sitting on the startup side, we generally look at large corporate and say, okay, hey, they have crores with multiple zeros following it in the bank account. Why are they always negotiating us with us for like 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakhs? But I think that's very important point for a startup to remember that each corporate also has to be conscious of its own cash flows and also making sure that what they are doing is not, it's a meaningful expense. It's an expense at the end of the day, it's an investment, and they have to get certain returns on it. So Abhay, your thoughts?
I take Rohan's point that you need to have patience to get inside the corporate, and once you get the foot in the door, the opportunity is much bigger. But the other side which you have to look at, and I will give a couple of examples, even the current startup which I am working. In 2017, when I started in the first year itself, I got approached by one of the global waste management company from Finland. And this was inbound, and they liked our platform, they liked our concept. We started interaction, we were new, we were learning, and they wanted to work with us. The 6 levels of meetings have happened. 5 people traveled from various parts to India. Pune we went, we traveled with them. After one meeting, the next meeting to get the calendar of the people used to take 2.5 to 3 months. So now this conversation is still on. We haven't done a business of single rupee yet, and we are doing 250 crore revenue this year as compared to 1.8 crore that year. So I think somewhere there has to be a thin line how much, what you need to have a process where we were a pure startup. We're lucky that our other businesses clicked. We spent a lot of energy, money on them. We traveled. Being a startup, we have limited resources. Although they also did from their side, no doubt about it. Intent was good. There's no doubt. There was no intent. But somewhere I think the corporates also need to manage that this is a startup which need some revenue, some understanding, some work. Doesn't need to be, or at least let's wait for 2 more years. We'll talk about in 2024 or 23. Nobody will force anybody. That was one part. Second part, I feel that there is a need of a platform or a process inside the corporate to deal with startups. So what I wanted to tell you that is the only thing I require. Nothing, no mandate. If the product is up to mark, co-creation, there has to be a single point. There's as Saurabh said, every website has an innovation. There has to be a person who can be a single point of contact for all startup related things, whether like Rohan is now doing it on behalf of Maruti for some extent, right? So I think similar platform will help startup also to not go everywhere, CIO, CTO, CEOs, everybody, they don't have to really reach out.
Absolutely.
They have a
Absolutely.
channel to really interact, and then they get the answer that whether it is possible or not.
Absolutely.
Second thing which I observed in my last venture, that was in SaaS company, where our targets were only enterprise retailers like Walmart, Lulu, Future Group, all those guys. So one of the things which we observed that time, and that has changed a bit now, but not yet fully. And when they used to evaluate our product, and they used to have other options. So when many times, at least out of, I had 60 enterprise clients, at least 20 which I couldn't get, has given me a feedback offline that your product was up to mark, it was perfect, it was economically very good for us, but I could not take, because if I take SAP, nobody will question, my job is not at risk. If I take your product and it fails, I will be blamed for it. I am that decision I am going to own. So I saw at least many places, I will say 15 to 20% places where our product was not taken up because we are a startup as compared to an established product by SAP or somebody else, right? So because nobody will lose a job for selecting that product than taking my product and taking that risk. So somewhere that approach change inside the organization, it's not one person can bring, it has to be a mandate from top to bottom that, okay, these are the few experiments. Don't use it for a mission critical, don't use it for your accounting, don't use it for transaction or banking, but there are multiple other areas where you can try it. But by then our product was much proven. We had Walmart as our client, still other 10 felt, 20 felt that this is a startup, I will go for an established name where no risk for me, save my ass kind of approach was something we saw in many places. So these are 2 areas of improvement I found, and I think there is a change. So what it was in 2007, we started Marjack in 2022. I think it's quite a change. Startups, corporates are using startups products multiple places, no doubt about it.
Thanks, Abhay. I think you brought up very good point in that every time a corporate makes a decision of working with a startup or choosing to go with an established product, I think that's a big decision that each corporate has to look at when trying to acquire a product that solves one of their internal problems. So I think in the interest of time, I would like to conclude with one question to all of you. So typically what happens is that when we approach a startup, they're very articulate in terms of telling what all should change on the corporate side and how they should work better with the startups. And we would go to a corporate, they are also list out in terms of saying that what should the startups change to work with the corporates. So I'm going to turn that question around and ask all the four of you to respond quickly in terms of what are the things that you are doing internally within yourself from a startup perspective or corporate perspective to make you work more effectively with the other partners. So for Saurabh and Rohan, I know from an enterprise or a corporate perspective, what are you doing to make it more effective to work with startups? And Abhay and Raj have the reverse question, is that how are you changing yourself or how are you adapting yourself to be more successful with in working with corporates? We'll start with Raj.
Yeah. So, very good, question, Suresh, here, right? So, we as, I've been on both sides, as a startup as well as a corporate. So today, if you look at corporates have this issue that how do we reach out to startups, right? There is no platform, we want to reach out to startups. We want to understand what they can bring to the table. We want to, reach out to them. Okay, because there are a lot of issues, problems, which possibly can be solved by, a lean, well-meaning team in terms of, a product or, a service. Right, but they really don't know how to reach out. Okay, and in my opinion, one of the things which the ecosystem should do is create a platform, okay, which would connect startups to corporates and corporates to startups. Right? Corporates, if you see, we are ROI driven. Okay, for any investment which we have to make, it has to yield profits, right? For startup, for it to survive, it need a service, it needs some business, some revenue to come in. Okay, while on the other side, if you look at it, corporates have experience, so they can actually handhold, guide, mentor, and see that if the startup is going in a wrong direction, okay, then like guide them that okay, possibly this is a better direction. So four very important things is A, ability to reach out to corporates, for corporates to reach out to startups. B, sessions like this, right? Sessions where there are corporates, where there are startups, to be regularly done so that there is more interaction, okay, and faster processing. Okay, if there is a platform where people can come in and process this faster, is much better. So we are in fintech, Abhay is in recycling, somebody is in EV, somebody is in like manufacturing sector. No, the time for India has come where corporate and startup have to merge together with each other. Corporates have to start behaving like startups. Okay, if you look at today, larger larger companies in most of the countries, right? You see, they work as a startup. Look at metaverse. Look at how they are re-engineering themselves completely. Okay, look at Microsoft. What's happening? Microsoft is become so nimble. Okay, why? Because people are realizing that at the end of the day, whether it is a startup, whether it is a corporate or whoever, they are all reaching out to consumers, right? And consumers want faster, better, and easier experience with any one of them, right? So keeping this context, okay, that customers, we have to make our customers win. Startups and the corporates getting together on a single platform would be a win-win, is how I feel.
Thanks, Raj. So I'll move to Saurabh, your views in terms of what do you think are the success factors that you talked a lot about how you're already engaging with startups. So what are the 2-3 differentiators that are making your organization work successfully or engage successfully with startups?
Yeah, Suresh, I think a very valid point raised by all panelists. And I was pretty intrigued with what Abhay said. He gave the problem and he gave the solution. So I think that's how the attitude of, and that's what defines a successful business and a successful startup. See, I think the important aspect, the large organization, just to share with you, we have 195,000 employees worldwide. Okay, so it's a very large organization. Okay, see what we have done and what large organizations are doing is that they're driving innovation as a key agenda and not for the sake of just putting it as one of the stakeholder statement. They've actually created separate teams to engage with to engage with startups. And in addition to creating those teams, there are separate funds that have been given to us. So, for example, for an incubator team or the team that I work with, I don't have to depend upon business unit to fund a POC or even a pilot of a customer. Right? So, having a separate set of people where innovation is an agenda, failing is okay. So I don't get penalized if 8 out of my 10 startups fail, because that's supposed 20% is excellent rate, right? So that understanding, that well-defined failing is okay, keeping a separate fund, having a dedicated team, engage in an MVP model. These are 4 or 5, keeping a large funnel where there are startups at various stages. So hence you have a value proposition or a reason to engage with startups of various size and shapes. Mentoring sessions, that's a 6th thing that on and off we are doing that. We are engaging with organizations like T-Hub to be present there, keep in sync with training our employees in design thinking and making them aware of how the startup agile ecosystem works. So some of these steps extensively been taken at various corporate levels. The various corporates that I engage with are doing all these aspects to address some of the complaints that has been raised in the past by various startups. And they are getting addressed, and that's the reason that the ecosystem is evolving and changing so nicely and towards the positive side.
That's very encouraging, Saurabh. I mean, it's good to hear that there is a approach taken from the corporate side to actually make the startup engagement successful. So Abhay, one thing is that you work on both sides. So how have you adapted some processes within your organization to make you successful in engaging with the corporates, because you are going to engage a lot with the corporates? So what are the changes that you have brought in within or adapted within your organization to make it meaningful?
So I think Suresh, what we have done, we have not really we did not much to change while working with the corporates. We need to actually establish some processes. For example, even a corporate agrees to work with you or use our product, the first thing they require is the vendor registration. And I think this is the most difficult part in India to get into a corporate. You are that 3 years something might happen in 2 meetings also, but then the 3 months or 4 months or 5 months of getting vendor registration done itself is, I think there can be a startup or a technology build where the corporates gets a process where the vendor registration happens in 1 week. And if that problem gets solved, I think half of these problems will be solved. So I think, and there are problems on both sides, because the corporate processes are built with certain consideration, with their whole learnings of their so many years, compliance, all those stuff. And the startup many times do not even have 30-40% of the documents required for that. They need you have paid the PF of your office boy, or there are so many certification documents which are required, which are really not ready with the startups many times. So what I did, because of my first earlier experience, we made sure that in Recycle we had everything which is required. But we had 200 almost good large clients in markets. We know what it takes to get vendor registration. In fact, somebody can form a startup and only sell some pencil pen to the startups and get registered at 500 startup as a vendor. That can be a valuable startup itself, because they have already vendor registration with 500 corporates. So that's a big pain area, which I think we actually as a company inside, we created that process. That's something need to be done. We need always be prepared. We had this MSME registration. So generally corporates are 90 days or 120 days payment systems, right? That is standard, pretty in their business terms. But having been MSME registered, you need to be paid in 30 or 60 days, whatever is the law, right? So that sometimes helps, and corporates also value it. They paid during that period. But for startups, 120 days is like you don't even know whether the office will be open after 120 days if you don't get paid for the 120 days. So I think there are those 2-3 operational. They are very operational in nature, but I think those things does matter, because if you don't have, the startup doesn't have that readiness internally, even if your product is great and Saurabh is impressed, he said, let's go for it. But then his process will not allow you to get inside unless you have A, B, C, D, E, right? They can be flexibility of A, B, C, D and E can go, but then ABC is also you need to be ready for. So I think that is the area where we worked internally, but we knew it. But for all the new startups, I think there has to be, they need to have those compliance and all kinds of requirement ready. And then from corporate side, going forward now, the things are changing. It is expected that they will also have more flexibility. Like we said, a startup division. So similarly, a separate registration for startup. Like with not all 10 things, at least 6 things. They can just get entry. Then balance they can fulfill in 12 months. Something of that sort. And those things I think need to come and will then bring this collaboration to a next level altogether.
In fact, like what we have CSR away,
yeah.
That we have to spend 2% of our funds on CSR.
Yes.
And most of the companies feel, here, there about spending that. Possibility if, we can make a strong representation to the finance ministry and say that at least, 0.5% of your money or, maybe 10% of your business should come from startups, or, you can invest 0.5% of, your profits into startups, right? So that would be a huge kicker. If you really look at it, how, what has happened in the stock market, with retail guys coming in, right? And,
yes.
Today it being so widespread, that's why, whether FIs are selling, in a full blow or no, but today, some of that offtake is taken by the retail investors, right? And the number of accounts which have got opened, about 10 crore accounts is like a huge thing. Similarly, for startups, if investment can be made by these large corporates, okay, and they have like a phenomenal, profit history for them, and they can pick and choose, which kind of startups, they can invest in. So my point is like, how we have employment exchange at a very low level, right? If we have a startup exchange where corporates can come, look at, various startups, pick and choose some of these startups and start interacting and investing, right? An exchange for startups could be a huge, huge opportunity for everyone, for corporates as well as for startups.
Yeah.
Thanks, Raj. I think that's a very important point that you brought up. How do we, I think earlier also somebody brought up in terms of providing the visibility of what the startups are doing to the corporates and vice versa, that what are the areas where for innovation.
So I think similarly, just look at Suresh, what has happened is, Prime Minister PM Modi has gone ahead and, announced January 16th as the, National Startup Day, right?
Yeah.
Create exchange. So Startup Day is good. We have Valentine Day, we have Startup Day. Fantastic, right? What more than that, right? So actually do the Valentine Day in terms of, getting the startups across to corporates, okay? Do the match fixing, in the right sense, okay? Matchmaking, I would say, not fixing. Do the matchmaking in the right sense and, create an engagement platform. Okay, and I think, our state, which has been at the forefront, and Rohan, you should definitely impress upon, your company to set up some operations, in state of Telangana. And we as Telangana state could go out and say and create an exchange, at least for Telangana exchange.
Yeah, I think, so Raj, I have one request for you.
MSR, the onus is on you now.
No, actually, I'm putting some.
I want to just build on a couple of points you made. Actually, since there are a few people here who worked in the US, so they have this in the US. You have this concept of small business, right, and minority employer, and so and we also have it here in an Indian context. So PSUs supposed to mandatorily buy from MSMEs a certain percentage. They get some price preference, etc. That hasn't happened with the rest of corporate India, right? So that's one area to think about, and also to see if there are some parts of what is there in the Small Business Act, right, which can potentially be modified, tweaked, and adapted in the in the Indian context, right? And of course, this idea of doing a building the equivalent of BharatMatrimony.com for startups to corporates is a welcome one. I'm going to come back to you and ask you to write a check to help us build it. Okay. So
no, I have a bigger request for Raj, because given his Yantra experience and this thing, maybe you need to come up with the equivalent of heart that is associated with Valentine's Day, and come up with something that every startup and corporate can identify as a unique badge of honor that they can wear and go around on January 16th. So that it can become, it can be a huge product that can be sold across entire India. I think that's one thing. Great, guys. Thank you very. Okay, well, I have one request. Are you all? I mean, no, we have only about 3 minutes left. Are you all okay to extend it by about 5 minutes? Because we haven't had a chance to interact with the audience. Because I mean, I just continued because I think the kind of information that you are sharing, I think it's useful not only for corporates and startups, but both to understand what are the nuances in this engagement and what both sides need to do to make it happen, and what are the critical points. I had kept 5 minutes for myself to summarize, but I think I won't be able to summarize in 5 minutes. I'll keep it 1 minute. So Shankar, probably for next 5 minutes, we can take questions from the audience. If you already have something, maybe
yes,
you can read.
so, yeah, so Mr. Manish Gupta, Mr. Manish, please go ahead with the question.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Shankar. Can you hear me?
Oh yes, please go ahead.
All right, perfect. And wonderful audience. I had enjoyed this last 35 minutes of this time very much. And Abhay, since you mentioned SAP, it's like a serendipity for me, right? I was just wondering कि कोई तो नाम लेगा SAP को और मुझे बोलने का मौका मिलेगा, but I think thank you for that. And I think you were right. There is challenges, and we as SAP have also identified that. In fact, in the morning, our managing director for SAP Labs was the keynote speaker, and she did mention about the open innovation and what we as SAP are doing. So I definitely would like to extend this on behalf of SAP, gentlemen. We want to do open innovation, not just in an isolated way within SAP, but we are looking at extending it to work with our customers, to work with our partners as well, and in a more meaningful way, right? So I don't know if my other colleague, Mr. Justin, is there on this call, who leads the Startup Studio program, but SAP plus the Startup Studio plus T-Hub plus customers, right? I think that makes all the four corners of the quadrilateral, and whether we want to make it a square or rectangle or something else, it's up to us, but happy to really collaborate, right? So we work closely with the MSR and the T-Hub teams now. Let us know, especially Rohan, Saurabh, feel free, Raj, and Abhay, definitely for you, yeah. But yeah, that was just one thought that I wanted to put on the table. Thank you, Shankar.
Thanks, Manish, for your open innovation offer.
Thank you.
Right, so Shankar, next question. I request audience to keep it small, brief in terms of question directly to the panelists.
Yeah, thank you, Manish. Mr. Kaustubh, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, I run a startup in Hyderabad for manufacturing firms, and I would like to actually connect with Mr. Rohan to discuss if we can do a pilot at Maruti. I